Educating yourself on the process of bringing a baby into the world is the most powerful thing you can do to prepare for the birth of your baby. Hi, I'm Alex, a childbirth educator, labor and postpartum doula, and a mom of 2. Let's get into this. The process by which your baby comes into the world is more complex than people think. And in order to set your brain up for success, it is good to know the stages of labor and, for the most part, what you can expect for each stage. From dilation to the terms used by medical professionals, we are going to cover all the basics that will help you feel more confident going into your labor space. So first, stage 1, dilation and effacement. So stage 1 is split into 3 different parts, and I'm going to be doing a series on these later in the next coming weeks if you want to dive into that more. But it's important to note when we go through each of the phases of stage 1 that in terms of dilation, when we talk about centimeters dilated, this is an approximate and isn't going to be the same for everyone, but this is pretty standard of what you'll hear. So for early labor, this is when you dilate from 0 to about 4 or 5 centimeters. Labor starts out with irregular, inconsistent contractions that feel a little bit like period cramps. They can be uncomfortable, but you can walk through them, talk through them, and really they don't stop you in your tracks whatsoever. They typically come anywhere from 7 to 30 minutes apart, and they last anywhere from 25 to 45 seconds. Typically, this is the longest point in most women's labor, especially for a first-time mom. Needless to say though, for the first majority of this, you can rest through it, make sure you stay hydrated, do a little bit of walking, move your body a little bit, but try really hard to sleep through early labor. For most women, this will start, early morning or in the middle of the night, and it's pretty easy to just stay calm, have a good sleep, and prepare yourself for what's coming. This is also a really good point in time to not get too excited, as early labor can last for a really long time. But like I said, it doesn't need to be hard because it's just the slow beginnings. But as you go through early labor, those contractions are going to come more frequently, lasting a little bit longer and feeling more intense. So by the time you're starting to have to maybe slow down, breathe through them, it might be a good time to start timing these contractions. If all of a sudden they're picking up and you really have to breathe through them or you really got to focus through them, and they're coming every 5 minutes, lasting about a minute, you're most likely into the next phase of stage 1, which is active labor. So active labor is when you go from 4 or 5 centimeters to 7 or 8 centimeters in dilation, and you efface 80% to 100%. During this stage, contractions and surges are coming more frequently. They're lasting a little bit longer. We're talking every 5 minutes, lasting about 60 seconds or even 45 seconds. And mama may need a little bit more help when it comes to this portion of labor. This is a really great time when you have a doula to ask for double hip squeezes, or that your doula may just ask you if you want her to support you physically. This is also when you can start getting a little bit more tired, and you're going to want to be able to have mental aids as well. So whether that's your partner saying you got this, or if you have affirmations that you practiced or mindfulness practices, this is a really good time to whip those out and start using them. This is also when you can use things like an epidural if that's something you want, but you have to make sure you're at the hospital to get an epidural. Or you can jump into the shower if it starts to get a little more intense. During active labor, when your contractions are coming every 5 minutes, lasting a minute for an hour, this is usually when most healthcare providers will tell you to go to your birth location. Whether that's the hospital, the birth center, or if you're at home, this is a great time to call your midwife. Needless to say, you should be calling your doula before 511. You should be calling your doula when you start to need emotional or physical support. As contractions pick up and you get checked, you may hear the terms, "Oh, you're 8 centimeters dilated." What this means is that you're probably about to go through transition. Transition is the last phase of stage 1. Surges are coming every 1 to 2 minutes, lasting 90 to 120 seconds each. And you may go into what a lot of us call labor land. This is when time gets distorted and minutes can feel a lot longer than just 60 seconds. I'm gonna get more into that when I go through this phase of labor in my labor stage series that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to look at that, you can go and check out that video when it comes out. During transition, mama requires a lot more support. This is when those double hip squeezes are super important. This is when the partner coming up and saying, you can do this, you know, we're doing this together, you're already doing this. Especially because this is the point in time when mama will start saying things like, I can't do this, this is too hard, I need an epidural. And often when mama starts to feel like she is done, she is so tired, she doesn't want to go on any further, and that's how you know you're in transition. A good note to make here though too is that for some women, their contractions change a little bit when they go through transition. There can feel like the beginnings of bearing down, but this is very different than the urge to push. So during transition, it's really good to continue those deep moaning breaths, moving that baby down. But this is not the time to start pushing. You want to make sure that you are fully dilated before you do so. So that wraps up stage 1. When you hit 10 centimeters dilated and your body begins to bear down, which you might get a break between transition and the next stage, which is pushing. So this begins with the cervix being fully dilated and ends with the birth of the baby. At this point, baby is engaged in the pelvis and their head begins the descent through the birth canal. You'll feel this pressure, like a need to have a bowel movement, and you'll feel this urge to push. As you're pushing baby through the birth canal and it comes to the vaginal opening, this is when you will feel what most women call the ring of fire, a burning sensation or a really intense stretching sensation as baby's head comes through the vaginal opening. This is a really good time to do some change of positions, move with your body, and push as you feel you need to. Some people, if you have an epidural and you can't feel those urges, you'll be guided through your pushing. And finally, stage 3. So once that baby is in your arms and you're basking in the glory of your new beautiful baby, you'll still feel some contractions picking up a little bit as the placenta begins to come away and detach from your uterine wall. It's good to note that the placenta is one of your baby's organs. It's not an organ that is for you. So this organ also needs to be birthed and needs to be disposed of. Breastfeeding, nipple stimulation, things like that will continue to put out oxytocin will in fact help the placenta to be birthed. Oxytocin causes the uterine contractions, which then pushes and cuts off the capillaries from the placenta so that it detaches from the uterine wall. You will then be told to give a little push, and most of the time it is easier than pushing out the baby, so don't worry. Typically, healthcare providers will give you about 30 minutes to birth the placenta. If it does take longer than that, there is a risk of hemorrhaging. Some hospitals, it's procedural to give you Pitocin with the brand oxytocin. So Pitocin is the synthetic version of our hormone oxytocin. And Pitocin, one of the biggest brands out there, they call oxytocin. But it's good to know that it is different than the natural oxytocin that your body releases. Typically, in hospitals, you'll actually just receive a shot of it in your leg or your butt while you're pushing. If you choose to be more reactive and let your placenta try and detach by itself, when you hit that 30-minute mark, sometimes a healthcare provider will then give you Pitocin. And then once it is birthed and that placenta is out, your contractions should totally slow down. So that is the 3 stages of labor. So it's really good to know these different stages of labor to best prepare yourself to know what's gonna happen when you are bringing your little baby into the world. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, like, or comment on anything that maybe stood out to you, and we will catch you on the next one.